this is also desperation. We're coming back to Star Wars now. Some of you may have seen this one floating around on Twitter, X. And again, I thought about doing a video on this yesterday, but I thought it's going to be a lot better if we talk about it here. This article, and again, this is the desperation. This is the sign that they know they're losing when they have to bring out the same old tire argument. The Star Wars EU is dead. Time to accept it. At least he used accept right. Give him that.
You sure didn't call it what?
That's all right. Now, here's where I already know I'm dealing with somebody who's an ingrate. The Star Wars Extended Universe. You've already lost, my friend. Expanded Universe. Some people only. I'll forgive a very few people who will say extended because they're not connected to it. They only know it as EU and have probably heard it said wrong by a moron like this. It is expanded universe. It's always been the expanded universe. It's not the extended universe like you wish your tiny little dick was extended. Piece of shit. Ugh. The Star Wars Extended Universe is beloved by fans, but it's long dead. It's not dead enough that Disney Star Wars doesn't pillage from it on a regular basis, is it? It's time for fans to accept the EU is dead and embrace new Star Wars stories. Right away, Mustang, do you feel the desperation?
Well, I want to know how the EU is dead if, it's got to be dead because Kathleen Kennedy always says they didn't have anything to go off.
Yeah, we got no lore. We have no books, no comics, no video games to source from, to mine for lore and stories. We don't have that. We're not Marvel. But this person's a fucking idiot. Fucking idiot.
Well, it's a reporter that didn't do any
no research.
Background research, yeah.
No, so you look at this. Do you already feel the desperation? Because Disney Star Wars is on the decline. It's on the wane. And the EU is being talked about a lot more. I see a lot of this on X. EU fans posting retro EU stuff, like their collections and stuff they find, I'm seeing a lot of that lately. A lot of it. All right, let's get into this. I'm not going to do a voice. I don't feel like doing a voice tonight. Star Wars is undoubtedly one of the most popular franchises in the world, not just in film and television, but through books, comics, and video games also. The Star Wars universe expands. You can say expands there, can't you twat? Expands through so many mediums, it can be hard to keep track of all the different stories. That was the argument they used in the first place to get rid of it, isn't it, Mustang?
Yes, it is.
Before Disney purchased Star Wars, does it again, the extended universe, fucking retard, the extended universe was the home of all these stories. When Disney bought the franchise, the EU ended, but many fans refused to let it go. While there is nothing inherently wrong with holding on to stories that bring joy to fans, it becomes a problem when it acts as a barrier of entry to people trying to enjoy new Star Wars stories. Wow. I haven't read all this all the way yet. I haven't given this. I wanted to wait. I wanted my fresh reaction for you guys. Wow. That's that is so full of shit. Mustang, when this started, when Disney started their project, their Star Wars project, their attempt to replace George's Galaxy Far, Far Away, which that's what it is. It's a full-on attempt to replace George's Galaxy Far, Far Away. When they started this, with the exception of a small, minute percentage like myself, I was an outlier where I immediately rejected all of this because I saw what was going to happen. I immediately rejected it, and when they threw out the EU, I blackpilled. Every other major Star Wars fan, even real EU fans who were not so quick to blackpill as I did, they were open to this. Is that correct, Mustang?
Half and half.
But they were people who were open to it.
They were open to the carrying on of Star Wars if it was done with, and excuse me, I have to say this so the author of this article understands it, so long as the history, canon, and lore were respected.
And they haven't even done that.
Correct.
The existence of the Filoni-verse, and I call it that because it's Dave Filoni's bullshit. The existence of the Filoni-verse directly undermines the original trilogy.
And this idiot wanting to say that people wouldn't accept the new one because people actually understand the history, canon, and lore, and they understand that what Filoni and Star Wars is doing is absolutely breaking it. They are not in the Star Wars universe. They might as well be in the Battlestar Galactica or Babylon 5 or Star Trek universe. It's that distant from what the original is.
So when this started, when this whole Disney experience started, all the way up to The Last Jedi, there was no barrier.
No.
The old Star Wars EU, now referred to as the dirty word we do not mention here, began in 1978 when the first Star Wars novel came out. From that point onward, countless books, comics, and video games continue to expand on the story started by George Lucas. That is, this goes to show you that he didn't even bother to do his research. Yes, Splinter in the Mind's Eye technically is the first EU novel, but the EU really doesn't start till 1991. There were a lot of little things, little children's books, this and that came out, some comics here and there that were taking place in between the original trilogy, but the EU itself doesn't start until the early 90s with the Thrawn trilogy, and then the beginning of diving into the Old Republic and shit like that. That's when the EU really began. So this guy takes a very broad brush to say when all this stuff happened. So again, not even bothering to do research. These stories told tales of Luke, Han, and Leia after the rebellion. They explored the years before the prequels and looked at everything in between. Again, you didn't do your research. Oh, excuse me. One of the most famous and beloved eras of the EU. Both eras of the EU was the Old Republic. Yet in order for Disney to be able to tell any stories, the cancellation of the EU had to take place. Well, that is the company line, right, Mustang?
No.
Company line.
No.
We had to get rid of. You know, I had to get rid of it because everything they've written doesn't stand up to the EU.
They had to do it for one reason and one reason only. They had to have it so they could get their political, social agendas in there. That's it. Period. Point blank.
Well, also money. They wanted to stop paying royalties and fees to people to the actual creatives who made the EU. And we can say that they made it, and they did it with George's blessing.
Yes, they
did.
For
all you doubters out there, George Lucas had a hand in the entire EU, from books to games to comics. When I say games, I mean both tabletop and video games. He had a hand in it all. Nothing was done without his stamp of approval, and he used his veto power often. George, that is why I will always say the EU is canon, because George was involved with it. George has not been involved since 2012. Therefore, everything Disney does is fan fiction. This is bullshit. That the EU is that Disney had to get rid of it to tell their stories. That's true, because as I said when we started this section of the conversation, Disney Star Wars stories cannot even compare to real Star Wars stories. It's junk. It's garbage. All right. The death of the Star Wars EU is necessary and for the best. Okay. Disney was obviously looking to tell new stories in the Star Wars universe, and in order to do that unencumbered, Disney needed to kill. I think he's doing it on purpose at this point. I think he's trolling when he says extended universe.
Smart enough to be trolling.
I don't know. It triggers me so bad. There are things that trigger me. Pet peeve. I hate this. Triggers me so bad. The EU. If Disney had kept the EU intact, then it would have almost been impossible to find space to tell new stories in Star Wars. All right, see, here's the bullshit. Star Wars didn't need new stories. You had all the stories you needed right there. Mustang and I have talked about this. We talked about this on Star Wars Day this year. Disney would have just been printing money if they had adapted everything that already existed. All you had to sit down. All you had to do two things: pay the people who created it their fair share, their due, their cut, and then translate it to the screen. Sit back, hire the appropriate actors. We've had a whole discussion how you could transition the original trio while they were still alive. All of them were alive. Ford, Fisher, and Hamill. How you could have done flashbacks and just replaced them with younger actors as a handoff. And then once you were done with the Thrawn trilogy, you could have handed it off to a new set of younger actors that had been, in a nice way, handed the baton, handed the banner. And I
We
don't think
need
people
space
would have
whales.
complained. And then at the same time, you could have animated the rest of it in between. A mixture, as we've talked about lately, of movies and miniseries. Good mixture, you would have had it. It would have cost them, if they had just kept it intact, paid the authors their fees for it, or what's the term? Shit, what's the term? Residuals. Paid them their residuals. They would have. It would have cost them less in the run right now. Would you agree on that, Mustang?
Oh yeah.
Would have cost them way less. These cheap bastards didn't want to pay out. They would have made billions upon billions of dollars. They could have been reprinting all these books over and over, because you know what happened? Someone would watch the movie, and then the diehards would want to go read the book, or get the books on tape, or get the comic adaptation. They would have had to do zero effort. No effort. And everybody would have been pleased. EU fans, the most diehards, we would have been like, yeah, let's go.
Okay.
And then you would have converted all the people who had thumbed their nose at the EU for years. You would have converted them and then brought in new fans. It's such a simple equation. But to say they needed to tell their new stories, that is the statement of an uneducated, ignorant retard. Plain and simple. Yeah, but you look at this. So right here, this shows the ignorance. And to use the argument, you have to get rid of it, tell newer stories. How well are these new stories done? You've sank the franchise with your new stories. You've ruined characters. You've destroyed the mythology. You've destroyed it all for your new stories. All right. The company
you
would have
wrote freaking Boba Fett out of its own show, you dumbasses.
Boba Fett. Get it right, Boba Fett. The company would have ended up either just adapting books and games, or would have had to find small spaces to tell stories in between the events. No, there. You see, this is somebody who doesn't get it. Nobody cares about events in between. When you have all the stories available, who cares about events in between? You don't need to. That is an ignorant person who doesn't understand how storytelling works, or how to keep a franchise alive. What they're doing now, they're in between stories that is ruining the original trilogy. That's how you kill a franchise. That doesn't make it bigger. So retarded.
This person's probably in their mid to late 20s at best.
We'll check maybe at the end. Killing the EU allowed total freedom for the franchise to be destroyed. While Disney's promise of one consistent canon has not been kept, with many Star Wars books continually retconned. Yeah, they retcon their own shit to fix the plot holes they make. That when we talk about retconning, that's the bad use of retconning, when your shit is so cockeyed and fucked up that you have to retcon it in later shit to fix it. For better or for worse, though, transitioning from the EU to the sideline, word that will not be used, led to the creation of shows like Andor and The Mandalorian, shows that suck. Mustang, what has The Mandalorian done for the franchise?
Not a damn thing.
It has.
Well, actually, hold on. I know what it's done. It's pissed off all the fans for what they did to Gina.
Well, there's that. But I'm talking for the series. I'm talking for franchise, not for the Gina thing.
Okay, I watched the first two seasons, and I can't remember anything other than Luke coming back, and that was it.
I remember it, but then I watched other people tell me what happened, so I didn't actually watch it. My point is, though, what The Mandalorian did was dilute Star Wars. It turned it into a joke. It turned it into daycare for a little green genocidal bastard. That's what it turned Star Wars into. It it reminded everybody that you can bring Luke Skywalker in, but that's still the same Jake Skywalker in the sequel trilogy. All roads lead to Jake Skywalker in Disney Star Wars. It's the truth. So there's that. What did Mandalorian also do? It it made the prequels look better, that's for sure. But it dumbed it down for the stupid. And what did Andor do? Absolutely nothing. Andor conned a bunch of people who suffer from cognitive dissonance. Even some of the best of us in our sphere who liked Andor, you were conned. I'm sorry to say, you were conned. Andor is boring trash that tells a story that doesn't freaking matter because it's made up in Disney Star Wars lore. It's not. It takes apart actual Star Wars lore. It diminishes Star Wars lore by being stupid, by being impotent in its ability to actually get somewhere, telling us the story of something that happened leading into Rogue One, another Disney Star Wars creation. Kyle Katarn did it better.
You know, just thinking about this real quick, if they didn't do The Mandalorian, which we really didn't need, or Andor, but would have just gone with Boba and continued him on, they could have had their side story while they were still doing canon from the EU. People would have been happy with that.
It all depends on how it would have been done. It would have been
Well,
difficult
yeah.
to create a new history of Mandalorians or create characters like Cassian Andor. The EU is still no. First of all, you didn't need to create them. Cassian Andor doesn't need to exist.
No.
Mandalorians are very well defined in the EU, in actual Star Wars. Creating a new history, you mean the Dave Filoni history that he snuck in behind George's back, where he turns them all into pacifists. God damn, or just taking away their balls. Mandalorians and Disney Star Wars have no balls. And they're stupid. The Mandalorian show shows how stupid they are.
Here's the biggest problem here. The EU still exists, you dumbass. We have the books. We have the games.
What do I say all the time? They can't take it away from us. See, this is what we're talking about. This is the desperation. Somebody told this moron to put out this article because alarm bells are being sounded someplace that no one cares about the stores. Again, Cassian Andor, nobody cares or wants Cassian Andor. Nobody ever asked for Cassian Andor. He's insignificant, and he's played by a very mediocre actor. Sorry, but that's truth. Star Wars continues to borrow from the EU. Well, that's true because you have no goddamn original ideas. Despite Disney claiming the EU, the franchise continued to borrow. No, the word is pillage. The word is pillage and adapt aspects of the beloved stories anyway. Thrawn, parts of Mandalore's history, and even aspects of the New Republic have all been pillaged from the old EU. Ahsoka and Dave Filoni's movie will even be adapted. Okay, no, it's not. It's not even adapting, coming close to adapting Heir to the Empire. It's going to be a butcher. It's going to be horrible. While this has upset some Star Wars fans, so how about real Star Wars fans? Because everybody who supports the Filoni-verse, Disney Star Wars, and I'm going to say this because I've said this, coming back from sick, I don't play word games anymore. You're fake fans, you're stans, and if you have the balls to say, why can't we just have it all? You're a collaborator. That's what you call somebody who welcomes in the invading army with open arms and works to push their agenda while telling people who are originally indigenous to the town or the land you are in, it's okay. I'm working for you. We can still have what we like. They just need a chance to talk about and put their stuff on display too. You're a collaborator. You don't get my respect. I will call you out. Collaborators. While it's upset some Star Wars fans, others understand that this is what is best for Star Wars. Oh, Leo tells you what those others, the fake fans, the stands, the short bus riding, circle jerk, centipede humpers that are that go to con right now. Those people. Yeah. The EU had some good stories, but it was largely cluttered with way too much information. Wow. It takes some gall to say that. Way too much information. Oh, what? You mean this? You mean this right here? Mustang, does that look cluttered to you? With too much information?
Not a bit. I kind of understand it and know it pretty well.
It's got dates. It's chronologically organized. It shows you where to start if you want to go literally all the way back to the beginning and where to go all the way to
Crucible.
the end. So, and that's not even including video games and comics, which you can easily submit. That's not too much information or clutter. That's a dedicated fan's going to sit down and have a really good time. That's what that is.
Yeah, that's literally telling the fan, here's where you start, here's where you end. Enjoy.
This is what nerds love. We love this is organization of the content. We don't have to ask the question where to go, what do we do? This is not organized and disorganized and cluttered and too much information. It's all the proper information. So that's that retard excuse of, oh, it was the EU was too confusing. It was too we didn't know where to start. You didn't know what to do. No, it's all right there. All right there. It's a simple Google search right there.
It's not even nerds. That's
open
anybody.
the inside of a book. It's open as a book. What did you say? Sorry.
I said that's not just nerds. That's anybody. Anybody could pick that up and say, I want to know more about Star Wars. Where do I start? And you just hand them that, and they're like, thank you, and they can learn it all.
But you see how easy it is to machine gun holes through their arguments. It's so easy because they're ignorant, either willfully or they're just goddamn retarded.
Dude, when you could shoot holes in their target from the headline, you know it's all shit.
Yeah. Picking and choosing what parts of the EU to make Star Wars, to make it to Star Wars canon is the best way to move forward. No, it's their only recourse because they have no fresh and original ideas. So they pillage all the good ones and bastardize them. Rise of Soy Walker is a complete bastardization of Dark Empire. Minus Luke being alive. Complete bastardization of major plot points of Dark Empire. Now, Dark Empire has a lot of controversy surrounding it. I like it. You can go check out my review of it in my EU Book Club playlist. Star Wars Expanded Universe was a huge part of Star Wars history, but it is just that, history. The EU is dead, and fans need to finally accept that, oh, the past is dead. Kill it if you have to. That sound familiar? That sound familiar?
It sounds like this one tried to remove statues and change school names and street names.
Yeah. Disney will continue to use whatever they want from the old stories, and that's absolutely for the best. For all the hype surrounding the EU, it was largely a mess, and it's definitely Star Wars better. This person is a complete and total retard. We just proved how wrong he is about that. God. But he's a shill. Oh, that's the end of it. Look at that. We're done. So there you go. This is
how old
desperation.
Is he?
What? How old is he? Let's take a quick look. Let me just say, this is desperation. Because interest in the EU, I believe, is on the rise. I believe interest in real Star Wars, I believe conversions are happening every day. I believe people are rejecting Disney Star Wars every day, and they are looking to real Star Wars, whether through me or other channels or other social media influencers. They're hearing about the EU more, and they go and look at it. And I guarantee somebody reads the Thrawn trilogy, and they'll be hooked. You'll be hooked. Expanded Universe is real Star Wars. It is canon, and I will carry that banner into battle for the rest of my life. All right, I'm done. Thanks for watching, everybody. If you'd like to reach out to me, please email me at theranernerd@gmail.com for all channel business purposes. I am on Twitter now, mostly for promotion and sharing of videos, maybe a little shit stirring here and there, who knows, at @theranernerd. You can also find me at the Geeks and Gamers forums under @ROAS, and you can see me on Rumble and Odyssey under the Renaissance Nerd. Thanks again for watching. Take it easy.